The Galactic Council had existed for 12,000 years. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had witnessed the birth of new species and the extinction of old ones. They believed they understood everything about the universe and every creature that lived in it. They were wrong about humans. When humanity first made contact with the greater galaxy, the Council studied them carefully. Humans were physically weak compared to most species. They had no natural armor like the. They had no poison glands like the. They could not survive in vacuum like the silicon-based. They were embarrassingly short, barely 100 years at best. The Council classified them as a minor species, useful perhaps for labor or entertainment, but nothing more. The Empire watched humanity with different eyes. There were ancient predators, a reptilian species that had conquered 47 worlds through fear and violence. They saw humans as soft creatures, easy targets for their slave markets. Human bodies were fragile, yes, but humans bred quickly and could work in environments that killed other slaves too fast. The Emperor, Lord, decided that Earth would become their next harvesting ground. Ambassador Sarah was the first human to stand before the Galactic Council. She was a small woman with hair and kind eyes. She spoke softly and smiled often. The council members looked at her and saw weakness. They did not see the steel underneath. When she requested protection for human colonies from raiders, the council heard her request. Humans were not important enough to risk conflict with the Empire. Sarah returned to Earth with bad news. The human government prepared for the worst. They moved their most advanced weapons to the colony worlds. They trained their soldiers harder. They waited. The attack came 6 months later on the colony world of New Melbourne. 3 warships appeared in orbit without warning. They destroyed the small defense station within minutes. Then they sent their hunting parties to the surface. They did not come for resources or territory. They came for slaves. The colonists fought back with everything they had. Farmers picked up rifles. Teachers built barricades. Old men and women who had never held weapons in their lives stood shoulder to shoulder against the raiders. But there were professional soldiers with advanced armor and energy weapons. The colonists fell one by one. They rounded up 300 survivors in the main settlement. They separated the strong from the weak, the healthy from the sick. Those too old or too damaged would be killed. The rest would be taken to slave markets. Among the survivors was a group of 42 children from the colony's school. Commander, the officer leading the raid, examined his prizes with satisfaction. The adult humans would sell well, but the children were even more valuable. Young slaves could be trained and conditioned. They would serve for decades. Ordered his soldiers to load the children onto a separate transport. The parents screamed and begged. Some tried to fight. They killed them without hesitation. 8-year-old Maya Wilson watched as her mother fell to the ground, smoke rising from the burn hole in her chest. Maya did not scream. She did not cry. She simply stared at Commander with eyes that held no fear, only a terrible, burning promise. Found the look unsettling, but he was a warrior. He feared nothing, especially not a human child. The distress signal from New Melbourne reached Earth 12 hours after the attack. It reached the nearest human military base 4 hours after that. Admiral James read the report 3 times before he believed it. His hands shook, not from fear, but from a cold rage that spread through his entire body. 42 children had been taken. His own granddaughter was among them. Admiral did not wait for orders from the government. He did not consult with diplomats or politicians. He gathered every ship under his command, a fleet of 47 vessels, and jumped toward space. His message to his crews was simple. They would bring the children home. Anyone who stood in their way would die. The Galactic Council learned of the human fleet's movement within hours. Ambassador stood before them once more, but this time she was not asking for help. She was delivering a warning. The humans were coming for their children. The council should stay out of the way. The representative, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline shell, asked a question that revealed how little the galaxy understood about humans. Why would humans risk war for 42 children? Children could be replaced. Breeding new ones was simple biology. The survival of the species was not threatened. The response made no logical sense. Ambassador looked at them with an expression that made several council members uncomfortable. She explained slowly, as if speaking to a child, that humans did not calculate the value of their young based on numbers or each child was precious beyond measure. Each child was loved individually and completely. Humans would burn entire civilizations to protect a single child. This was not a weakness. This was their greatest strength. The council dismissed her words as emotional exaggeration. They would learn the truth soon enough. Admiral's fleet entered space without permission or warning. The first patrol that tried to stop them was destroyed in 3 minutes. The second patrol lasted 2 minutes. Word spread quickly through the Empire. The humans were coming and they were not stopping for anything. Lord received the news with confusion rather than concern. His empire had 5,000 warships. The humans had sent 47. The math was simple. He ordered 100 ships to intercept the human fleet and destroy it. He expected the problem to be solved within a day. The Battle of Station lasted 4 hours. They came expecting easy prey. They found a nightmare instead. Human ships were smaller and less armored than vessels, but they were faster and more maneuverable. Human weapons were different too. They used missiles that thought for themselves, seeking out weak points and changing course to avoid defenses. They used energy beams that could cut through armor like water through sand. But the weapons were not what truly shocked them. It was the humans themselves. Warriors were bred for combat. They were fearless and skilled. But the humans fought with something they had never encountered before. They fought with absolute rage, complete dedication, and zero concern for their own survival. Human pilots flew their damaged ships directly into vessels, destroying both. Human soldiers boarded ships and fought hand to hand, killing with their bare hands even after their weapons failed. Of the 100 ships sent to stop the humans, 3 survived. They fled back to Lord with stories that sounded like madness. The humans could not be stopped. They could not be reasoned with. They could not be scared. They simply kept coming, wave after wave, until everything in their path was dead. Lord finally understood his mistake, but it was too late to correct it. He tried to negotiate. He offered to return the children unharmed. Admiral's response was a single sentence. The children were just the beginning. The human fleet reached the of Prime 2 weeks after leaving Earth. By then, 300 ships had been destroyed. The children had been located on a slave processing station in orbit around the planet. Admiral gave Lord 1 hour to surrender the children and the officers responsible for taking them. Lord, with 500 ships still defending his, refused. The Battle of Prime was the shortest in galactic history. The humans deployed weapons that no one had ever seen before. They called them judgment rounds, missiles that created artificial singularities, tiny black holes that existed for only seconds but consumed everything within range. 300 ships vanished in the first minute. The orbital defenses followed. The slave processing station was captured by human marines who fought through every corridor and killed every who raised a weapon. The children were found in holding cells on the lowest level of the station. They were frightened and hungry, but alive, every single one of them. Maya Wilson ran into the arms of her grandfather, Admiral, and finally allowed herself to cry. Lord was captured alive. He was brought before Admiral in chains, his proud scales now dull with fear. He begged for mercy, promising anything the humans wanted. Admiral looked at him with the same eyes Maya had shown Commander. There would be no mercy. The Empire was dismantled over the following year. Every world they had conquered was freed. Every slave market was destroyed. Every military officer who had participated in slave raids was hunted down and executed. Lord was tried before a human court and sentenced to life imprisonment on a planet with no sun, forever cold, forever dark, forever alone with his memories. The Galactic Council watched in stunned silence as a species they had dismissed as insignificant destroyed an empire that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. They finally began to understand what Ambassador had tried to tell them. Humans were not weak because their bodies were fragile. Humans were not unimportant because their lives were short. Humans were dangerous precisely because they loved so deeply and protected so fiercely. A warrior fought for glory and conquest. A human parent fought for their child. There was no comparison. The council passed a new law, unanimous for the first time in 3,000 years. It was called the Doctrine, named after the ambassador who had warned them. The law was simple. No species, under any circumstances, for any reason, was permitted to harm, threaten, capture, or endanger a human child. The punishment for violating this law was not. It did not need to be. Everyone understood what would happen. Ambassador stood before the council one last time to accept their recognition of human sovereignty. She thanked them politely, but her final words were not for them. They were for any species in the galaxy that might be watching, any civilization that might be considering humans as targets. She spoke quietly, but her voice carried to every corner of the chamber. Humans would trade with anyone. They would talk with anyone. They would share their knowledge and their culture freely. But their children were sacred. Their children were protected by every human who had ever lived and every human who would ever live. Touch their children, and the galaxy would learn what humans were truly capable of. They had learned this lesson. She hoped no one else would need to learn it again. The chamber fell silent. The representatives of 1,000 species looked at the small, haired woman who smiled so kindly and saw the truth she carried. Behind those gentle eyes was the same fire that had burned the empire to ashes. Behind that soft voice was the promise of absolute destruction for anyone who threatened what humans loved most. The galaxy never forgot the lesson. For 10,000 years after that day, as human civilization spread across the stars and joined the great community of species, no alien ever touched a human child. The memory of the was too fresh, the warning too clear. Some species thought the humans were barbaric. Some thought they were admirable. But all of them, without exception, thought they were terrifying when it came to protecting their young. Maya Wilson grew up to become the first human admiral of the Galactic Defense Fleet. She served with honor for 60 years, protecting not just human children but the children of every species in the galaxy. When asked why she dedicated her life to this purpose, she always gave the same answer. She remembered what it felt like to be helpless, to be stolen from everything she loved. She would make sure no child, human or otherwise, ever felt that way again. Her grandfather would have been proud.